Yes, it certainly seems like this is a political decision, but ultimately these decisions do have to be made by politicians at the end of the day. Scientific advisors can advise, other advisors can advise, economic advisors or anyone else, but ultimately it is politicians that need to make those big calls. And yes, this is something that came as a surprise, not just to some members of SAGE yesterday, but also to devolved authorities in Scotland, in Northern Ireland and in Wales, and indeed to some ministers who were not expecting this at all. This was kept a pretty tight lid on in order to be announced at Prime Minister's questions, no doubt in part to try and move this conversation on from the Partygate stories that continue to drip out and that continue to make a bit of a nightmare for this Prime Minister. This Prime Minister is also, of course, off to Brussels and Warsaw today as the parliamentary recess, that half-term recess, starts this afternoon. Certainly politics doesn't slow down.
You know, but it is interesting, Tom, getting back to the COVID situation, that almost deliberately the Scottish advice in all of this, they're extending restrictions right into September.
It does seem that there is a bit of a difference for the sake of it policy between particularly Scotland and England, and has been for some time now. While Scotland and England went into lockdown in lockstep at the start of the pandemic, in the last year or so these two countries have diverged within the United Kingdom. It's interesting to see, given that the data seems to be really quite positive. Talking to MPs, they have been skipping happy over the last couple of weeks that looking at hospitalisations, looking at deaths, it's better than even some of the best case scenarios that the SAGE modellers had put forward just a few months ago. So the Prime Minister's caveat yesterday at that dispatch box was that if the data continues to be as positive as it has been, and to be fair to the Prime Minister, the data has been positive. We have very, very few people in ICU. We have numbers in hospital falling. We have numbers of deaths falling. It does seem that if there were to be any time to hedge an end to the pandemic, it could well be now.